Greetings, true believers. Well, our look at Phase 3 of the MCU now continues on with Spider-Man Homecoming. Following the Battle of New York in 2012, Adrian Toomes and his salvage company are contracted to clean up the city, but their operation is taken over by the Department of Damage Control, a partnership between Tony Stark and the U.S. government. Enraged at being driven out of business, Toomes persuades his employees to keep the Chitauri technology they already scavenged and use it to create and sell advanced weapons, including fighting Vultures through Toomes uses to steal Chitauri power cells. 8 years later, Peter Parker is strapped into the Avengers by Stark to help with an internal dispute in Berlin, but he resumes his studies at the Midtown School of Science and Technology when Stark tells him he is not yet ready to become a full Avenger. Peter quits his school's academic decathlon to spend more time focusing on his crime-fighting activities as Spider-Man. His best friend Ned eventually discovers his secret identity. Peter comes across Toomes' associates, Jackson Bryce/Shocker and Herman Scholl, selling weapons to local criminal Aaron Davis. Peter saves Davis before being caught by Toomes in the Vulture suit and dropped in a lake, nearly drowning after becoming tangled in a parachute built into his suit. He is rescued by Stark, who is monitoring Spider-Man's suit against Parker and warns him against further involvement with criminals. Toomes accidentally kills Bryce with one of their weapons, and Schultz becomes the new Shocker. Parker and his steady weapon Bryce left behind, removing its power core. When a tracking device on Schultz leads to Maryland, Peter rejoins the decathlon team and accompanies them to Washington, D.C. for their national tournament. Ned and Parker disable the tracker Stark implanted in Spider-Man's suit and unlock its advanced features. Parker tries to stop Toomes from stealing weapons from a DODC truck, but is trapped inside, causing him to miss the decathlon tournament. When he discovers that the power core is an unstable Chitauri grenade, he races to the Washington Monument, where the core explodes and traps Ned and their friends in an elevator. Peter saves them, including his classmate and crush, Liz. Days later, in New York City, aboard the Staten Island ferry, Parker captures Toomes' new buyer, Mac Gargan, but Toomes escapes and a malfunctioning weapon tears the ferry in half. Stark helps Peter save the passengers and confiscate his suit as punishment for his recklessness. Parker returns to his high school life and asks Liz to go to the homecoming dance with him. On the night of the dance, he discovers that Toomes is Liz's father. Deducing Parker's secret identity, Toomes threatens him. Parker realizes Toomes is planning to hijack a DODC plane transporting weapons from Avengers Tower to the team's new headquarters. He leaves the dance, dons his old homemade Spider-Man suit, and races to Toomes' lair. Though he's ambushed outside by Schultz, he defeats him with Ned's help. Inside, Toomes attacks Parker, destroying the building's support columns, and leaves Parker to die, trapped in the rubble of the collapsed building. Parker escapes and intercepts the plane, steering it to crash on the beach near Coney Island. He and Toomes continue fighting, ending with Parker saving Toomes' life after the damaged Vulture suit explodes. Parker leaves Toomes for the police along with the plane's cargo. After her father's arrest, Liz moves away. Peter declines an invitation from Stark to join the Avengers full-time, and Stark proposes to Pepper Potts. Stark also returns his Spider-Man suit to Parker, and puts it on just as his Aunt May walks in. In a mid-credit scene, an incarcerated Gargan approaches Toomes in prison, saying he has heard that the latter knows Spider-Man's real identity. Toomes denies this. Yeah, that's a big setup for absolutely nothing, so there you go. So anyway, let's look at the production of this movie, beginning with the development. Following the November 2014 hacking of Sony's computers, emails between Sony Pictures Entertainment co-chair Amy Pascal and President Doug Belgard were released, saying that Sony wanted Marvel Studios to produce a new trilogy of Spider-Man films, while Sony retained creative control, marketing, and distribution. Discussions between Sony and Marvel broke down, and Sony planned to proceed with its own slate of Spider-Man films. However, in February 2015, Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios announced that they would release a new Spider-Man film, with Kevin Feige and Pascal producing, the latter through a company of Pascal Pictures. The character first appeared in an earlier Marvel Cinematic Universe film, later revealed to be Captain America: Civil War. Marvel Studios would explore opportunities to integrate MCU characters in future Spider-Man films, which Sony Pictures would continue to finance, distribute, and have final creative control over. Both studios have the ability to terminate the agreement at any point, and no money was exchanged with the deal. However, a small adjustment was made to a 2011 deal that gave Marvel full control of Spider-Man's merchandising rights in exchange for a one-time payment of $175 million to Sony and paying up to $35 million for each future Spider-Man film rather than receiving their previous 5% of a Spider-Man film's revenue. Marvel could now reduce their $35 million payment if the co-produced film grossed more than $750 million. Marvel Studios still received 5% of the first dollar gross for the film. Lone Star Funds also co-financed the film with Sony via its LSC Film Corporation deal, covering 25% of the $175 million budget, while Columbia Pictures served as official co-producer with Marvel Studios. Sony also paid Marvel an undisclosed producer fee. Marvel had been working to add Spider-Man to the Marvel Cinematic Universe since at least October 2014, when they announced their slate of Phase 3 films, with Feige saying, "Marvel doesn't announce anything official until it's set in stone." So we went forward with that plan in October, plan being, if the deal were to happen with Sony, how it would well shift. We've been thinking about the Spider-Man film as long as we've been thinking about Phase 3. Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach, producers for the Amazing Spider-Man series, were set to serve as executive producers, with neither Mark Webb nor actor Andrew Garfield returning for the new film. Sony was reportedly looking for an actor younger than Garfield to play Spider-Man, with Logan Lerman and Dylan O'Brien considered frontrunners. In March 2015, Drew Goddard was considered to write and direct the film, while O'Brien said he had not been approached for the role. Goddard, who was previously attached to Sony film based on Sinister Six. Later he said he declined to work on the new film as he thought he didn't have an idea for it, and struck with the idea of working a new film after spending a year working on the Sinister Six film and being in that mindset. The following month, while promoting Avengers Age of Ultron, Feige said that the character Peter Parker would be around 15 to 16 years old in the film, which would not be an origin story, since there have been 2 retellings of that origin in the last 13 years, so we're going to take it for granted that people know that and the specifics. Parker's Uncle Ben is still referenced in the film, but not by name. There was some discussion to include a direct reference to Ben when Peter is getting ready for his homecoming by the revelation that his wardrobe consists of Ben's clothes. But the writers desisted because they felt that the moment veered away from Parker's character arc and made Ben's death feel like a throwaway line. Later in April, Nat Wolff, Asa Butterfield, Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet, and Liam James were under consideration by Sony and Marvel to play Spider-Man, with Holland and Butterfield as the frontrunners. In May 2015, Jonathan Levine, Ted Melfi, Jason Moore, the right team of John Francis Day and Jonathan Goldstein, and Jared Hess were being considered to direct the film. Butterfield, Holland, Judah Lewis, Matthew Lintz, Charlie Plummer, and Charlie Rose screen tested for the lead role against Robert Downey Jr., who plays Tony Stark/Iron Man in the MCU, for chemistry. The 6 were chosen out of a search of over 1,500 actors to test in front of Feige, Pascal, and the Russo brothers, the directors of Captain America: Civil War. By early June 2015, Levine and Melfi had become the favorites to direct the film, with Dylan Goldstein and John Watts also in consideration, while Feige and Pascal narrowed the actors considered to Holland and Rowe, with both screen testing with Downey again. Holland also tested with Chris Evans, who portrays Steve Rogers/Captain America in the MCU, and emerged as the favorite. On June 23rd, Marvel and Sony officially announced that Holland would star as Spider-Man and that Watts would direct the film. The Russos were pretty vocal about who they wanted for the part, pushing to cast an actor close to the age of Peter Parker to differentiate from the previous portrayals. They also praised Holland for having a dancing and gymnastics background. Watts was able to read the Civil War script, talk with the Russos, and was on set for the filming of Spider-Man scenes in that film. He was able to see what they were doing with it and provide ideas about this and that, including that Parker's bedroom wardrobe looked like so that my movie transitioned seamlessly with theirs. On joining the MCU and directing the film, Watts said he was excited to explore the ground level of the MCU, worlds where characters like the Avengers exist, but have only been depicted in previous films as the penthouse level of the Marvel world. Before getting the job of director, Watts created images of Nick Fury as Parker's mentor in the early mood reels, saying, "I don't know what the situation would be, but that would be a person he'd want to get in trouble with." Feige said the films of John Hughes would be a major influence and that Parker's personal growth and development would be just as important as his role as Spider-Man. He noted that, at that age, in high school, everything feels like life or death. He also said that the film hoped to use one of Spider-Man's rogues had not been seen in film yet, and the filming would begin in June 2016. July 2015, it was reported that Marissa Tomei had been offered the role of May Parker, Peter's aunt. It was also revealed that Daly and Goldstein, after missing on the director role, had begun negotiations to write the screenplay. It would given 3 days to present Marvel with their pitch. Both confirmed shortly after that they had reached a deal to write the screenplay. The pair had proposed to take on the character that was diametrically opposed to the previous Spider-Man films, creating a laundry list of all the elements seen in those films and actually trying to avoid reusing them. They chose to focus on high school aspects of the character rather than the drama and weight of the tragedy that leads to the origin of Spider-Man. They felt this would differentiate him from the other MCU superheroes as well. Daly said the film was about Parker finding his place in the MCU, with the writing team wanting the film to focus on him coming to terms with his new abilities and not yet being good with them, and him carrying with him some real human fears and weaknesses, such as the fear of heights when he has to scale the Washington Monument. Daly noted, "Even within the context of this movie, I don't think you would feel that fear of heights or even the vertigo the audience feels in that scene if you establish him as swinging from skyscrapers at the top of the movie." The writers also wanted to avoid the skyscrapers of Manhattan because of how often they were used in the other films. Instead, wrote the character into locations such as the suburbs, on a golf course, the Silent Ferry, Coney Island, and even Washington, D.C. One of the first sequences they pitched was seeing Spider-Man attached to a plane 10,000 feet up in the air where he had absolutely no safety net. You're familiar with the sort of areas he's been in, so why not turn it on its head and make it something different that people haven't seen before? The maker stated that the film took a more grounded, low-stakes approach than the previous films, which avoided having to explain why the Avengers were not helping, since the world-running problem logically required the big guys. Marvel encouraged Daly and Goldstein to express their own sense of humor in the script, with Daly saying, "When you're seeing the world through the eyes of a funny kid, you can really embrace that voice, and not give him the cookie-cutter one-liners that you're so accustomed to hearing from Peter Parker." Inspired by the experiences working on sitcoms, the writers also looked to create a network of strong characters to surround Parker within the film. In October 2015, Watts said that he was looking to make the film a coming-of-age story to see the growth of Parker, citing Can't Buy Me Love, Say Anything, and Almost Famous as some of his favorite films in that genre. It was this aspect of the film that had initially got Watts interested in directing it, as they had already been looking to make a coming-of-age story when he heard that the new Spider-Man would be younger than previous incarnations. Watts reread the original Spider-Man comics in preparation for the film and came to a new realization about the character's original popularity, feeling that he introduced a new perspective to the comics that had already established a crazy, spectacular Marvel universe, to give a regular person's perspective on it. He also felt that this was also the responsibility of this film, since it had to introduce Spider-Man to the already established MCU. A specific comic that Watts noted as potential influences were Ultimate Spider-Man and Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. In December, Oliver Scholl signed on to be the production designer for the film. Now on to the pre-production. Watts wanted to heavily pre-visualize the film, especially its action sequences, as he does on all his films. For Homecoming, Watts worked with the team to figure out the visual language for the action sequences and try stuff out before filming began to help Watts practice, given his lack of experience working on large-scale films. For the web-slinging sequences, Watts wanted to avoid the big swoopy camera moves that had been previously used, instead keep it all as grounded as possible. So whether it was shooting it with a drone camera or helicopter or cable cam, or even just handheld, up on a roof chasing after him, I wanted to feel like we were there with him. In January 2016, Sony shifted the film's release date from July 28, 2017 to July 7, 2017. It said the film would be digitally remastered for IMAX 3D in post-production. J.K. Simmons expressed interest in reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. In early March, Zendaya was cast in the film as Michelle, and Tomei was confirmed as May Parker. The following month, Feige confirmed that characters from the previous MCU films would appear, and clarified that the deal formed with Sony does not specify which characters can and cannot cross over. He also noted that the sharing between the studios was done with good faith in order to have more toys to play with as we put together a story. That the agreement was that it's very much a Sony Pictures movie. We are the creative producers. with them hiring the actor, introducing him in Civil War, and then working right now on the script and soon to be shooting. Sony Pictures Chairman Tom Rothman further added that Sony has the final greenlight authority, but we're deferring creatively to Marvel. At CinemaCon 2016, Sony announced the title of the film to be Spider-Man Homecoming, a reference to the common high school tradition Homecoming, as well as the character coming home to Marvel in the MCU. Tony Revolori, who auditioned for Peter Parker, and Laura Harrier joined the cast as classmates of Parker's, and Downey Jr. was revealed to be in the film as Stark. Once known that Stark was always a part of the film's story because of his interactions with Parker in Civil War. Also in April, Michael Keaton entered talks to play a villain, but dropped out discussions thereafter due to scheduling conflicts with the founder. He soon entered talks for the role after a change in schedule for that film and closed the deal late May. Mark Hamill was interested in playing the film's villain in case Keaton turned down the offer, but Keaton reconsidered the offer in time. In June, Michael Barbieri was cast as a friend of Parker's, and Kenneth Choi was cast as Parker's high school principal, and Logan Marshall Green was cast as another villain alongside Keaton's character, while Donald Glover and Martin Starr joined the cast in undisclosed roles. Watt said that he wanted the cast to reflect Queens as one of the most diverse places in the world, with Feige adding that we want everyone to recognize themselves in every portion of our universe. With this cast especially, it feels like this is absolutely what has to happen and continue. This also different from the previous films, which were set in a lily white Queens high school. Additionally, Marvel made a conscious decision to avoid including or referencing characters who appeared in previous Spider-Man films, outside of the major ones like Peter May Parker and Flash Thompson. This included the Daily Bugle, co-producer Eric Hauser made Carol saying, "We toyed with it for a while, but again, we didn't want to go down that road right away. And if we do a Daily Bugle, we want to do it in a way that feels contemporary." This also included the character Mary Jane Watson, but Zendaya Michelle was eventually given the initials MJ as a nod to that character. Feige said the point of this is to have fun references while at the same time having it be different characters that can provide a different dynamic. Spider-Man's costume in the film has more technical improvements than the previous suits, including the logo on the chest being a remote drone, an AI similar to Stark's Jarvis, a holographic interface, a parachute, a tracking device for Stark to track Parker, a heater, an airbag, the ability to light up, and the ability to augment reality with eyepieces. Stark also builds in a training wheels protocol to initially limit Parker's access to all of its features. Carol noted Marvel went through the comics to pull out all the sort of fun and wacky things the suit did to include in the Homecoming suit. Spider-Man's web shooters have various settings, first teased at the end of Civil War, which Carol explained allowed him to adjust the sprite to different settings like the spinning web, web ball, or ricochet web. You compare this to a DSLR camera. And now on to the filming. Principal photography began on June 20th, 2016, at Pinewood Atlantis Studios in Fayette County, Georgia, under the working title Summer George. Salvatore Totino served as director of photography. Filming also took place in Atlanta, with locations including Grady High School, downtown Atlanta, the Atlanta Marriott Marquis, Piedmont Park, the Georgia World Congress Center, and the West End neighborhood. Holland also said building New York sets in Atlanta was cheaper than actually filming in New York, a location closely associated with character, though the production may end up in New York for 1 week or two. A replica of the Staten Island Ferry was built in Atlanta, with the ability to open and close in half in 10 to 12 seconds and be flooded with 40,000 gallons of water in 8 seconds. Additional filming also occurred at 2 magnet schools in the Van Nuys and Reseda neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Casting continued after the start of production, with the inclusion of Isabella Amara, George Landenberg Jr., J.J. Toda, Hannibal Buress, Stanislav Vea, Abraham Ada, Michael Mando, Tyne Daly, Garcelle Biovis, Tiffany Espenson, and Angourie Rice in unspecified roles, with Wickham Woodbine joining as an additional villain. At San Diego Comic-Con International 2016, Marvel confirmed the castings of Keaton, Zendaya, Glover, Harrier, Reverly, Daly, and Woodbine, revealing Zendaya, Harrier, and Reverly's roles as Michelle, Liz Allen, and Flash Thompson, respectively, announcing the casting of Jacob Balatone as Ned. It was also revealed that the Vulture would be the film's villain, while the writing teams of Watts and Christopher Ford, Chris McKinnon, and Eric Summers joined Goldstein and Daly in writing the screenplay for Goldstein and Daly's story. Eric Pearson, a member of Marvel Studios' writing program who had written the Marvel one-shot films, did uncredited work on the film as well. Watts praised Goldstein and Daly's drafts as really fun and funny, and said they sort of established the broad strokes of the movie, with him and Ford, close friends since childhood, then rewriting the script based on specific ideas that Watts had and things he wanted to film, which he said was a pretty substantial structural pass, rearranging things and building it into the sort of story arc we wanted to be. McKinnon and Summers then joined the film to deal with changes to the script during filming, as it's all a little bit flexible when you get to set, try things out, and you just need someone to be writing while you're shooting. Harry noticed the young actors' film constantly referred to ourselves as the Breakfast Club. Shortly after, Martha Kelly joined the cast in an unspecified role. In August, Michael Chernus was cast as Phineas Mason/Tinkerer, while Jonah Zhao joined the cast in an unspecified role, and Bryce said he was playing a gym teacher. By September 2016, Jon Favreau was reprising his role as Happy Hogan for the Iron Man series. The filming concluded in Atlanta and then moved to New York City. Locations that area included Astoria, Queens, St. George, Staten Island, Manhattan, and Franklin K. Lane High School in Brooklyn. Additionally, UFC fighter Tyron Woodley said he had been considered for a villain role in the film, but had to drop out due to prior commitment with Fox Sports. Principal photography wrapped on October 2, 2016 in New York City, with some additional filming taking place later in the month in Berlin, Germany, near the Brandenburg Gate. And now on to the post-production. In November 2016, Feige confirmed that Keaton would play Adrian Toomes / the Vulture, while Woodbine was revealed as Herman Schultz / Shocker. In March 2017, Harry said the film was undergoing reshoots, and Evans was set to appear as Steve Rogers / Captain America in an instructional fitness video. Watson was inspired by the President's Fitness Challenge for this, feeling that Captain America would be the obvious version of that for the MCU. He then started brainstorming other public service announcements starring Captain America about just anything you could think of. We had poor Captain America do it. Watts said that many additional PSA videos would be featured on the home media of the film. According to Goldstein, additional videos featuring other Avengers were planned at some point. Watts confirmed that the company's dark creates that leads Toomes on his film in this film is damage control, which Watts felt just fit in with our overall philosophy, the kind of story we wanted to tell, and create a lot of practical questions Watts wanted to use to drive the story. The film features multiple post-credit scenes. The first gives the Vulture a chance of redemption, showing him protect Parker from another villain. Watts said this was a really interesting thing in the development of the story. You could have just run the tropes of the villain being a murderer and killing a bunch of people. He had to be redeemable in some capacity in the end, and that he believes everything he said, especially about his family. The second post-credit scene is an additional Captain America PSA, where he talks about the value of patience, a meta-referential joke at the expense of the audience, who have just waited through the film's credits to see the scene. This was a last-minute addition to the film. Watts completed work on Homecoming at the beginning of June 2017, approving the final visual effects shots. He stated that he'd never been told that he could not do something by Marvel or Sony, saying, "You assume you'll have to fight for every little weird thing you want to do, but I didn't really ever run into that. I got to do kind of everything I wanted to do." That month, Starr explained he was playing the academic decathlon coach at Parker's high school, and Marshall Green was said to be portraying another Shocker. In July, Feige discussed specific moments in the film, including homage to the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 33, where Parker's trapped underneath rubble, something Feige wanted to see in a movie for a long, long time. Daly said they added the scene to the script because of how much Feige wanted it, and explained, "We have Parker start the scene with such self-doubt and helplessness, in a way that you really see the kid. You feel for him. He's screaming for help because he doesn't think he can do it, and then he kind of realizes that's been his biggest problem." Feige compared the film's final scene, where Parker accidentally reveals that he is Spider-Man to Aunt May, to the ending of Iron Man when Stark reveals that he is Iron Man to the world, saying, "What does that mean for the next movie? I don't know, but it will force us to do something unique." Ghosting added that it diminishes what is often the most trivial part of superhero worlds, which is finding your secret. It takes the emphasis off that and lets her become part of what's really his life. Feige also talked about the film's revelation that the Vultures is the father of Parker's love interest, feeling that if it did not work, the film would not work. The team worked backwards and forwards from that moment. You had to believe that we had set it up so that you would buy it and it doesn't seem like something out of left field. Once the revelation scene and the following interactions between the Vulture and Parker were more than anything else what I was looking forward to. I have to go, and I got to have a lot of fun shooting that stuff. Goldstein said that the scene after the reveal, where Vulture realizes that Parker's Spider-Man while driving him to the school dance, was the moment he was most proud of in the film. Daly said that scene's effect on audiences was a dramatic equivalent of an audience laughing at a joke they had written. He thought the writers were giddy when we first came up with that twist, because it's taking the obvious tension of being the father of the girl that you have a crush on, multiplying it by 1,000. We also realized he's the guy you've been trying to stop the whole time. And now on to the visual effects. Visual effects for the film were completed by Sony Pictures Imageworks, Method Studios, Luma Pictures, Digital Domain, Cantina Creative, Aloria, Trixter, and Industrial Light and Magic. Executive producer Victoria Alonso initially did not want Imageworks, which had worked on all previous Spider-Man films, to work on Homecoming, nor give a different look than those earlier films. She changed her mind after seeing what she called phenomenal test material from the vendor. The film's main noted title sequence was designed by Perception. Trixter contributed over 300 shots to the film, including the opening scene at Grand Central Terminal, the sequence that retells the events of Civil War from Parker's perspective, the sequence where Toombs takes Liz and Parker to the dance, the school battle between Parker and Schultz, and the scene around and within the Avengers compound. They also worked on both Spider-Man suits and the Spider Tracer. Trixter can create additional salvage workers to populate the Grand Central scene, whose close-up proportions were able to be altered to create variation. For the battle between Parker and Schultz, Trixter used an old digital Spider-Man in his homemade suit, which came from Imageworks. Trixter applying a rigging, muscle, cloth system to mimic the appearance of the rather loose training suit. They also created the effects for Schultz's gauntlets and had to change the setting from the Atlantis set to Queens by using CGI skull and adding 360 degrees of map paintings for the far and mid-distance elements. Trixter received concept art and basic geometry that was previously used for the Avengers compound, but ended up remodeling it for the way it appears in Homecoming. Models and textures for Spider-Man's Avenger costume were created by Framestar for use in a future MCU film, with Trixter creating the vault that it appears in. Trixter and VFX supervisor Dominic Zimmerl said the idea was to have a clean, high-tech presentation vault for the new suit. It should appear distinctively Stark originated. Digital Domain worked on the Staten Island ferry battle, creating CGI versions of Spider-Man, the Vulture suit, Iron Man, and Spider-Man's drone. Digital Domain was able to use the LiDAR and an actual Staten Island ferry, as well as the version created on set, to help with creating their digital version. Lou Pecora, visual effects supervisor at Digital Domain, called the sequence brutal because the way they were shot, it was lit to be a certain time of day, and afterwards it was decided to change that time of day. Sony Pictures Imageworks created much of their act of the film when Parker confronts Toombs on the plane and Beach in his homemade suit, and Toombs in an upgraded Vulture suit. Some elements of Vulture's suit were shared with Imageworks, but the remainder were created on a system based on maquette. For the plane's cloaking ability, Imageworks was inspired by Adaptive Eye Camouflage Tank cloaking system by BAE Systems, which used a series of tiles to cloak against infrared. For the web design, which was based on one created for Civil War, Digital Domain referenced polar bear hair because of its translucent nature. Imageworks also looked to the Civil War webs, as well as those they had created for previous Spider-Man films, which the webs had tiny barbs that aided in hooking onto things. For this film, they dialed back the barbs to line more closely with the other web designs created for this film. Method Studios worked on the Washington Monument sequence. The Iron Man armor seen in the film is simply the MK XL VI armor from Civil War, recolored to resemble the Ultimate Iron Man armor, as Sony did not have the budget to create a new Iron Man armor. And now finally on to the music. While promoting Doctor Strange in early November 2016, Feige accidentally revealed that Michael Giacchino, who composed the music for that film, would compose the score for Homecoming as well. Giacchino soon confirmed this himself. Recording for the soundtrack began on April 11, 2017. The score includes the theme for the 1960s animated series. The soundtrack was released by Sony Masterworks on July 7, 2017. So overall, as the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU, this is actually pretty dang good, and I like the fact that it doesn't do the whole origin story scene, which we've seen about a million times already, and just goes right for it, so yeah. So overall, I give Spider-Man Homecoming 5 arc reactors out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in next time as we take a look at Thor Ragnarok. So, until then, in the words of late great Stan Lee, Excelsior!